I'm going to turn it over to you, Rick, and ask you first, how'd you get started here?
Well, I got started, actually I went to Full Sail, but I went to Write and Direct. I went through the film program. Didn't do sound at all. And one of the things that they had in the courses at the time was they had a really good emphasis on sound at the beginning. So if I remember correctly, it was something like 3 months of our the first portion was just all sound classes. And I remember we were in a class, there was like 30, and out of the 30, there's like 25 of them they were always complaining, I want to be a filmmaker, I don't want to do sound. And everybody's just completely blowing out the courses. But I'm like, well, if Full Sail is telling us we should know something about sound, I'm going to pay attention. So I took like crazy notes and all that stuff. And I grew up, I played in bands and stuff when I was a kid, and so I had some interest in sound, but it's not what I wanted to do. And I'll never forget, we had one instructor in particular that always stuck on my mind was Steve Bell. And he was this really cool cat. He was kind of like this hippie guy, had the long hair and the ponytail and wore sandals all the time. And he was really entertaining and obviously very knowledgeable about the subject. And so I just barraged him with questions. So we're in this course on sound. We're all filmmakers. And I was always the one guy that was like constantly raising my hand and asking questions. And what does this stand for? And what does this mean? And so whenever my hand went up, everybody in the class would be like, ah. But to me, it was like, I don't care. I'm here to learn. You know what I mean? So for me, education is like going to the gym, right? You can have a gym membership. That does not mean you're going to lose weight or you're going to gain muscle, right? You got to go into the gym. You got to lift the heavy things and then put them back down. You got to go on the treadmill and run like a hamster, right? That's how you get improvement. And so just because you're at Full Sail does not mean you're guaranteed success. It's a matter of how much are you putting into it. You will get out of it exactly what you put into it. Nothing more, nothing less. So my mindset when I was at school was, if they're telling me sound's important, I want to pay attention. So I asked a bunch of questions, and I went to all of the, what were they called? No. No, I did not pay attention to that class. Gee whiz, not the lectures, but the labs, thank you. It's been a while since I've been to school. But I went to all the labs. I got to know the instructors, and I would hang out after the lab and play with the gear and ask questions just because I wanted to learn. And it ended up paying off because when I graduated, I moved back to Detroit, and I started looking for jobs, writing and directing because I thought in my mind everybody was looking for me, and they weren't. Not at all. So I got there and nobody was hiring, and I was, I got a little bummed out. And after a couple months, I'm like, oh, gee whiz, man, if I'm going to get into this, I just got to jump in and do something. So, so I sent out resumes. So this is when was this? This was like mid '90s. So not like hardly anybody had email at the time. So you couldn't email your resume. So I had to go to Kinko's and actually I photocopied like 40 resumes. And because there's no email, I had to lick 42 envelopes and 42 stamps in order to send these out. And you guys don't even understand what your mind goes through after you've licked like the 40th stamp. Your brain starts to go numb. So I was hooked on stamps for about 3 years. No. So I sent out 40 resumes, and I had like this great resume, picked this awesome font, put it on this nice cardstock and all this garbage, and I mailed them all out. I got 40 responses in the mail. And I was like, oh my gosh. In my mind, it was like this holy grail moment, like the light shined out of the clouds. I was like, oh. And then I realized that I had put my address at the wrong place. And so I had just sent myself 40 letters. So there I was, licking 40 more stamps. And I had to resend them all back out. And then out of 40 letters, I got one person that was kind of interested. And so we ended up doing, I called the guy 3 times, and I ended up doing 2 sit-down interviews with the guy to try to get the gig. And I fought my way. The last interview, we were sitting in his editing suite, and I was, pretty much begging him, like, I can do this, man. I can do whatever you need me to do. And he said, can you do sound? And so I was in sales pitch mode at that time. I'm like, of course I can do sound. No idea what I was doing. Of course I can do sound. And he's all right. We'll give you a shot. So that weekend, which was a Saturday, he had me do some throwaway corporate video gig for Ford. It was like a picnic or something, and all the corporate people walking around and eating watermelon. And they wanted it videotaped. So we had a shooter, and then I was running sound. So I said, great, I'll see you on Saturday. So I went So I went home, dug up all my notes on sound from Full Sail. I'm like, okay, how does this go and how does this work? And, pulled up manuals of the mixer that I was going to use and just kind of figured it out in my head. I show up to the gig maybe 20 minutes early so I could figure out how to plug everything in. And, I knew enough to be dangerous, but that was about it. But I knew if I put 100% into it and was just Johnny on the spot on the set, that it would pay off. And sure enough, it did. We worked. It was just like a half-day gig. But I was there with the shooter, man. I was paying attention. I followed around. I made sure I got the best audio I could. And the shooter was impressed enough with me that he talked to the owner of the company, and he's like, this kid's kind of good. You might want to give him a shot. And so the next week, I was working with the Red Wings for ESPN. And then like a week later, I was doing stuff with Good Morning America, and then like Today Show and other kind of, network gigs like that. And within a few months, enough people in town knew who I was, and I just became the sound guy. And that was it. That's kind of how I got started. It was a fluke thing. I wasn't really interested in sound, but I started to fall in love with it, and I kept trying to improve my recording techniques. So I didn't know what to do. I mean, how do you record dialogue or practice recording dialogue if you're not on a shoot? So I said, well, what can I record? I said, well, I could probably record sound effects. And so that kind of led off into my career.
Nice.
That's the short story.
The short version.
I don't know how much time.
So you talked a little bit about networking, a little bit about lying to your employer.
Yes. Lying to your employer is a great way to start.
Tell me about what are, in general, the secrets to success, in your opinion?
For me, the secrets to success, I have the 3 Ps, I call them. It's passion, perseverance, and people. The first and foremost, you got to have passion for what you want, for what you do. If you don't have passion, you're going nowhere. There are plenty of other jobs out there in the world to have that you can just check in and check out. This kind of industry is an industry that centers around passion. You have to really love what you do, and that passion will lead you into your industry. The proof of desire is pursuit. If you really, really want to do something, then you're already trying to do it. You don't just sit around and think about it. There's a story of a famous filmmaker, and I forget the guy's name. There's this famous filmmaker who was at a film festival, and this kid comes up to him and says, man, I really want to be a filmmaker. I want to do what you do. And the filmmaker looked at him and said, well, really? Well, how many films have you made? And the kid said, well, none yet. And the guy looked at him and says, then you really don't want to be a filmmaker. Because if you wanted to be a filmmaker, you would have made something by now. It doesn't matter how good it looked or how short it was, you would have made something. And going back to my story, by the time I went to Full Sail, man, I had probably made 40 or 50, home movies at the time. Now, this is back in the day where I had like the video cameras where you had to like put them on your shoulder, and big VHS tapes and all that kind of stuff. And you had to cut them, deck to deck, and that never worked because we couldn't afford the professional gear. So we shot everything, we edited in the camera, so we shot everything in sequence, But you know what? They were really horrible films. They were awful. Sound was garbage, and the picture looked like garbage. But I was doing it. I was doing something. They might have been 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever they were. At least I was trying to get into that world. I wanted to know more about that world. And so to me, it all comes down to passion. Do you really, really want it, and how bad do you want it? That leads into perseverance, because if you've got the passion, then you're going to go after it. And going after it, that's the battle, because the market is saturated for people right now. There's a lot of talent out there. So what is going to get you the gig versus the guy sitting next to you? And that's going to be perseverance, because you're going to run into a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, and a lot of no's. But the good news is you're not looking for no's. You're looking for a yes. You can get 500 no's. That doesn't mean you don't continue to look for the one yes. And the example I give, it's a great story, is this was about 5 years ago. I had a kid call me up, and he wanted to intern at the chop shop. And at the time, I was doing other stuff, and I just really wasn't interested in having an intern at the time. So I told him no. So he calls me up, a month later. Hey, man, just, interested in that internship, just let me know. I'm like, no, I'm not interested now. Well, this went on for several months. The kid ended up, he was emailing me, he was calling me every couple of weeks. How about now? And after I think it was the 8th time, he asked me, I was looking at my producer and I said, man, this kid keeps bugging me about the internship. And he goes, you idiot, you should bring this kid on. This kid really wants to be here. So after the 8th time, the kid said, you know what, I'll fly out to Detroit. He was in Colorado at the time. He says, I'll fly out to Detroit and sit down with you. I really want to, 15 minutes in front of you just to, talk about the internship. I said, all right. So the kid came in. We sat and talked for a few minutes, and, he obviously had passion. He really wanted to do this. And I said, you know what? All right, fine. You can do it. Come on in. So he came in and he interned with me. Usually my internships run about 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, he's like, I really enjoy being here and I want to learn some more. Can I stay for another 3 months? I said, sure. Well, he ended up staying another 4 months. And during the last month, I was doing a video series for Rode Microphones called Road Rage. And we flew out to LA and I got a chance to interview some of my heroes and guys that I look up to in the industry. So guys that did, sound design, sound editing, recording, record producers and things like that. And some of the people on the list were people that this kid wanted to meet. So he flew out with me and helped with the shoot, and he got to meet all these people and had great connections. So long story short, 7 months that he was with me. And, he was a hard worker, always had a great attitude, could put up with my crazy antics. And I said, all right. At the end of the 7 months, I'm like, what can I do to help you? How do you want to get started? Is there anything I can do, any strings I can pull for you? And he said, my dream is simple. I want to work at Skywalker Ranch. He wanted to work at Skywalker Sound. And I said, that's a pretty tough order. I said, but I know some people there that I could probably reach out on your behalf. And I normally don't reach out on behalf of the interns just because there's a lot of interns that we have and I can't keep pulling strings with all my friends. They'll just get annoyed with me. But this kid I thought had what it took. So I reached out to Skywalker and I said, listen, I'll probably never do this with you guys again, but I got this one kid. He's really good. Would you guys be interested in bringing him on? And he says, sure. He ended up going there and interning for a summer, and then he got hired. And now he works at Skywalker. In fact, I just watched Despicable Me 2 with my kid, was it last night or the night before? And his name's in the credits. It's so bizarre because there's a movie theater right around the corner from my house that he and I used to go to and watch movies, and we would talk about the sound and all that. And it's like now I go there with my kid, and his name is in the credits. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That's so cool. How did he get to Skywalker? Was it because of me and my connections? Nah, because the reality is if he didn't intern with me, he would have went somewhere else. He would have figured out a way to get into Skywalker. And that's what it takes. The ability to hear no constantly and still have the guts to say, okay, well, I'm gonna try one more time. Because the industry is a brick wall. It's not very inviting for the most part, unless you know somebody on the other side. You gotta get through that wall. So you gotta ask yourself what kind of person you are. Are you the kind of person that's gonna walk up to the wall and go, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to get over this wall, and then you turn on and leave? Or are you the kind of person that says, all right, how am I gonna get over this wall? Am I gonna go get a ladder? Am I gonna get a shovel and dig a tunnel underneath? Am I gonna go to Radio Shack with $10 and build a detonator and blow a hole in the middle with C4? What are you gonna do to get through that wall? And if you have the kind of ingenuity and the tenacity to say, that wall is nothing more than just a momentary obstacle that's stopping me from what's on the other side. If you have that kind of mindset, you'll make it in the industry. But if you're dismayed very easily with challenges, you're gonna have a hard time. Again, unless you know somebody on the other side of the wall,
So say you don't know somebody. Say you're a student here at Full Sail. You might not have gear. You might not have very much experience. Where do you suggest you start? How do you initially break in? Where do you find people that do this? Where do you?
Well, I think the first step is to just start recording. You have to build up your repertoire. You have to build up your craft. You have to have something that you can offer the other people. Because right now you're competing with people that the people that really want it are the guys that are out there doing it. They're the guys that stay home on the weekends instead of going out to parties. They're home, editing sound, or they're out recording on their days off, or these guys are going out there and they're doing everything they can to be the best that they can be. So you got to ask yourself, are you able to compete with that level of commitment? Are you more committed than them? Because the reality is man, it's a tough world out there, and there's a lot of people with a lot of talent. So the first thing you got to do is you've got to improve your talent. You got to improve your techniques and your skills. The only way you can do that is by going out and recording. How do you get started? You press the red button. That's it. You go out. I don't care if you've got a Zoom recorder or if you got a big sound devices. Well, they're kind of little sound devices. Or I don't care if you're using something on your iPhone. Do something. Record. And then once you've recorded it, review. Listen to what you did. Figure out what your mistakes were. Figure out how you can make it better. Do whatever, and then repeat. Go back and do it again. And to me, that's kind of how I got in. When I first started, I had what did I do? I was recording sound effects on a DAT recorder, and I just kept recording anything, like wind in trees, and I don't know. I would go to a junkyard and smash stuff around, and cars going by on the side of the road, anything. And I built up a big library of sounds, not for sale. I was just bettering my craft, and this was a long time ago. I had a supercomputer. I had 2 gigs of hard drive space, and I'll never forget it. Actually, I bought it a month before I graduated from Full Sail. I bought it, and I'll never forget it. Kip Geyer, a buddy of mine in class, he helped me buy the computer, and I'll never forget his reaction when he looked at the specs. He's like, "Oh my gosh, 2 gigs!" He goes, "Dude, you'll never fill 2 gigs because a gig is a billion, and that sounds like a lot, Well, at any rate, it took me a glorious couple of months of recording before I'd filled up my hard drive. So then I had to figure out a way to back up all this stuff. So I had to go out and get a CD burner, and blah blah blah. So as I'm getting this stuff clearing off my hard drive, I realized I had 1,000 sound effects. I'm like, 1,000? Oh my gosh, that sounds like a huge number. So I was like, what do I do with these sounds? So I went on Yahoo because Google wasn't around yet, and I just typed in sound effects. And then the first company that came up, they were this big sound effects publisher out of Canada. And so I sent them a demo reel. And I said, hey, here's my stuff. What do I do from here? Would you guys be interested in buying some of this stuff from me? And about a week or two, this time I mailed it right, so I didn't get it sent back to me. But about a week or two later, the owner of the company called me, and he says, we've listened to your stuff, and he said, we've been dealing with guys that work in Hollywood for, I think it was 20 years at the time. He says, and we really think your stuff is cleaner than what they're recording and what they're producing. Would you mind, producing libraries for us? I'm like, sure, yeah, and that's kind of how I got started. It was just kind of a fluke thing. Had I not typed in their, sound effects into the search engine, I wouldn't have even went down that road. But I produced a library for them. Did really well, and then they asked me to do some more, and I can't remember how many. I did a few dozen libraries, a couple dozen, I think, libraries for them or with them. And then from there, other sound effect companies were asking me about sound effects. I started producing for them, and then several years went by, and then I'm like, I should probably just start my own publishing company. So then I started Blastwave FX. And we do all HD sound effects, whereas a lot of the older stuff was originally recorded in 16-bit, and now so we're going more the high def route. So we do our stuff in 2496, and that's what I do now. Is I just I scour the earth for cool sounds, I guess, and then cut them up and try to make magic with it.
Awesome. So you've now produced more libraries than anyone on the planet.
I think I don't know. I mean, based on what I've seen other people do, I think there's 700, I think. I'm coming up on 700 libraries that we've done, so. Yeah.
So about 2 years ago, you came out with Zombie Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And that was fun. And then this past year, Heroes and Villains.
Mm-hmm.
So you started kind of doing these fun themes. And one of the interesting conundrums of sound effects is that there's so many of them out there. You can buy so many libraries that a lot of times it's hard to make something that's relevant. How do you brainstorm, come up with ideas, or make something that somebody's going to want to buy? Make a sound effect that somebody's like, oh, I don't have that, I'm going to buy that.
It's certainly getting tougher and tougher. It was easier when we first started Blastwave because there wasn't a lot of high definition content out there. So the world was our oyster. We could record anything. We could record a toaster, and it was like the world's first toaster in HD, So it was kind of relatively easy. But it's like once we built up, I think we got 60,000 sounds. It's like once you get to that point, Then it's like, now what do you do? You know, I mean, there's millions, if not, well, there's billions of things on the planet to record. So there's a lot of things, but it's like, how much of it is unique? How much of it is useful? And so we kind of take the approach of what are people looking for? What's hot topics right now? And what hasn't been done, or what has been done but could be greatly improved upon. And so with Zombie Apocalypse, you know, zombies are still a hot topic, but you know, a couple of years ago, that was like, and everybody was zombies. So we looked around and there's no zombie sound effects library. I'm like, well, gee whiz, that's kind of a no-brainer. So we produced that. It did very well. It's actually one of the best-selling products that we've ever produced was Zombie Apocalypse. And so then it was, what I'm doing is I'm painting myself in a corner. So it's like every time I do something, I try to go like really big and huge and over the top, and like I raise the bar. And it's like then the next time I go to do something, I realize that the bar is much higher now, so then I gotta like constantly outdo myself. So that's kind of, for me, I'm not really in competition with anybody so much as I'm in competition with myself. Because it's like the moment I start judging what I do based on what everybody else is doing is the moment I'm a slave to what they're doing. It's like I'm not doing it to be better than them. I'm doing it to be better than myself. I mean, there's a lot of talent out there, and I don't, for a split second, I don't think at all that I'm the best sound effects guy in the world, but I certainly try my absolute best. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like the competition is me. The bar is me. If the next product I go to do or the next project I work on, I need it to be better than the one I did before, because that's the only way I'm going to grow, and that's the only way I'm going to improve my craft. So.
Now, one of your biggest things, as far as the way you think, you're not really out there to make everybody buy your sound effects. You're also out there to teach people how to make their own sound effects. So you've got 2 books here. I see some people here have these with them. We've got the Sound Effects Bible. And when did you write this one?
This one was written in 2000. I'll hold it. I wrote this in 2008. This is actually the world's only book on sound effects. So by default, it's the best book on the subject. I encourage you guys to buy this, as I always say, because all proceeds go to hungry children. Actually, one I'm sponsoring in particular, his name's Sean, and he's my son. This is what I use to buy all of his Legos with. But yeah, this is kind of like the A to Z of like how to record sound effects. For me, there's no right way to make a sound effect. There are certainly good guidelines and things to worry about, like you don't want to distort the mic and all this kind of garbage. But in general, it's experimenting. It's just like anybody know who Cell Dweller is? Yeah, Cell Dweller. I actually he's in Detroit, and he does like a ton of stuff for film and television. Apart from being a really well-accomplished musician, he does a lot of music for trailers and things like that. And he's really, you guys should check him out. He's awesome. But anyway, he's in Detroit, and a mutual friend of ours, Matt Bush, introduced me to him a couple weeks ago. So I got to go to his studio, and really, really cool guy and really cool setup. And one of the things that he had is the modules that you make all the little funny noises with. And he had racks of it and just all this insane stuff. And we just got to talking about how we create sound. And someone was asking him, how does he make a sound? And he's like, I have no idea. I just tweak it until it sounds good. I'm like, that's exactly my approach. I have got sound effects that I've created that I think are like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. And then someone goes, oh, that is awesome, man. How did you make that? I'm like, I have no idea. I mean, I'd love to be able to tell you, well, there's this exact process I go through. But it's like, I have no idea. I mean, like, I don't know, a spaceship zipping by or like a cargo bay door ambience, you got like the pneumatic or the hydraulics or whatever, and you get the steam bursts and you got the servo motors, and it's like, how did you do that? I have no idea. I just kept throwing stuff on the timeline until it sounded good. And it's like, if you can understand that process, you'll be better off in your career, because it's like there is no exact formulas. How do you make the sound of a Wookiee? I don't know, so, and Ben Burt, who is the godfather of sound design, when he did Star Wars, it was like he wasn't like sound designer, so to speak. It's not like he had like 20 years of experience, and yet some of the most iconic sounds that exist in the film world came from this guy. He's just curious and liked to poke around. Who wants to copy the book? All right, let's do a competition. All right, I don't know how much time we have, but all right, who can do an impression rather of Chewbacca? Raise your hand. All right, ready? Let's hear it. Pretty good. Cameraman, I'm gonna walk. I wanna play you guys this sound. We don't have video for it, but I'll play you this sound. There we go. You guys ready? Here we go. Chewbacca, right? It's actually a cabinet door opening. It's much more entertaining if you could see what I'm saying, but just use your mind. Cabinet door opening. Here you go, man. Give him a round of applause. Yay! But the whole, I'm gonna grab my cappuccino since I'm up. But the whole thing with the cabinet door, sounds just like Chewbacca, right? You know, some of the coolest sounds come from like the stupidest things, the dumbest things, you know. So for me, it was, when I first started off, it was just, I recorded everything I could and just listened to it. One of my favorite things to do, and I still do it to this day, anytime I record something that I haven't recorded before, like a unique object or whatever, almost always the first thing I do when I pull it in the timeline is I'll pitch it up, and then I'll pitch it down. I want to hear what that kind of sound sounds like when it's slowed down or when it's sped up. And I trained myself. I've been doing that for years and years. And so now it's like in the real world, when I hear something, I can almost kind of tell what it's going to sound like slowed down or pitched up. And that's really helped me when I'm out gathering sounds in the field. I'm like, I bet you that would sound really cool this way or that way or whatever. But it's just experimenting. It's play, play, play.
So you got kind of...
Make it a long question because I want to drink for a minute.
All right. You kind of got addicted to the whole book thing and telling people, hey, I wrote a book.
Yeah.
Two
books.
2 books. Well, no, it wasn't that.
Oh.
But so was it 2 years ago now? Came out with this guy?
Yes, yeah.
The location sound Bible. I always call it production sound Bible. And this is kind of the other side of things. So you've made a living on recording things, objects, sounds, and this is how to make a living recording dialogue, which is a whole different beast. So why don't you talk a little bit about this book, all the research you did, the two different worlds?
Yeah, the thing with sound effects recording is that typically you're usually out by yourself and you're controlling the session. So you want the car to go this way to this, left to right or whatever at this speed. You can direct it and make it happen. When you're doing location sound, you don't have any direction for the most part at all. You don't get to direct. There's somebody else that's directing and dictating when things happen. And you don't know when the actors are going to speak sometimes especially if you're doing run and gun or ENG stuff. And the ad libs, the voices going up and down, all these sorts of things. So you're in a world where you went from having control, if you were into sound effects, and then you go into location sound. Now the control is taken away from you and you have to almost react to what's going on. And so one of the things that the book talks about is, the secret to good location sound is you get the right mic in the right place at the right time, at the right level. And so that's kind of what this book focuses on, because there's a whole slew of microphones that you can choose for different applications, so you got to know which one to choose. And then you got to know where the mic should be positioned in terms of, direction and all that. And then the right time, cueing actors and things like that. So that's kind of what this book is about.
Cool. And one of the common threads through both of your books is that it's not as much about having the latest and greatest, the chef's microphone, the $5,000 mics and the $10,000 recorders. It's how you use it, which is pretty cool. Most of our students can't afford a $20,000 sound package to start out. So you want to talk a little bit about your gear and how you've made your libraries without using the latest and greatest. Huge.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this, and it's simple. Technique trumps technology. Any day of the week, twice on Sunday. That's just the bottom line. Some of the best music that we listen to, in my opinion, was recorded 30, 40 years ago. Some of it's longer than that. You can go to Best Buy for $500 and get better fidelity, off of a sound card or a little mixer there and a microphone than what those guys had back in the day. Why does this stuff sound better? Guys knew how to use the gear, right? Just because you have the right gear doesn't mean it's going to sound good. And vice versa, So for me, it's like, if you know what you're doing and you're dangerous enough to experiment with it, you can make just about anything sound pretty decent, you know. A lot of guys are using Zoom recorders now, and it's like everybody poo-poos them. Oh, Zoom recorder, Zoom recorder. But it's like, yeah, but you know what? At least you're starting with something. Take that, improve on it, make it better, and then until you can get to the next level and purchase the next better recorder and then the next better recorder. But to me, it's like, you don't want to limit yourself with the mindset that I'm not a professional until I have this piece of gear. Nah, that's garbage. Don't fool yourself. You're good at what you do regardless of the gear that you use. The gear works for you, right? The paintbrush is controlled by the artist, not the other way around, right? So you can get a decent artist who can cut pieces of his own hair and glue them on a stick and make great art versus somebody who has a $10,000 paintbrush. That doesn't make them an artist. Does that make sense? I can prove this. Perfect example. You can give me a hammer. Dude, I am not a carpenter. I own a hammer. I could barely build a birdhouse. So it's not the tools, it's the techniques. It's you, it's the talent that you bring to it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Awesome. Cool example of that, Frank Maroney, who did, he was a re-recording mixer for Lost, always kept a Zoom on his stage, and every once in a while he'd be missing a sound, and he would just turn around, hit record it, pop it right into his, $400,000 console, and there you go. Mark
Mangini told me a similar story. I forget what somebody dropped a pen and they didn't have on the screen and they didn't have the sound or it wasn't working or whatever. So he did the same thing, grabbed the Zoom recorder, dropped the pen on the console, and then flew it into the track. But that's the thing is that we're like inundated with all these ads in the magazines that tell you have to have this gear in order to be professional. It's like, that's garbage, man. The guys that really know what they're doing, they know that that's all fluff. You know what I mean? I don't care if you've got a $500 recorder, a $1,000 recorder, or a $10,000 recorder. Your stuff either sounds good or it doesn't sound good. So, did I give the Duke Wellington quote yet?
No.
Anybody know who Duke Wellington is? Right. So he said this: if it sounds good, it is good. And he was referring to music, obviously, but I think there's definitely a parallel when it comes to sound. You know what I mean? If it either sounds good or it doesn't, and a lot of that, it just has to do with the techniques, how you recorded it, your spin on how it sounds. Yeah.
Cool. So at the Detroit Chop Shop, you have an internship that you talked about a little bit. You talk a little bit about what your interns do, the experiences they get, how you can become an intern.
So we hold internships. We might be doing them a little bit more frequently in the future, but typically once or twice a year we'll have interns come in. And internships for me, I take very seriously. I know several people that they use interns as like, free labor or, guys to go get your coffee and all that stuff. And I've never ever had that approach. To me, having interns is a commitment on my part, and that's why I don't do them very often. If I was just looking for free help, I'd have internships, 12 months out of the year. But to me, it takes time out of my schedule because I need to train them. I need to be there and answer their questions. I need to help them, and I organize everything, and it just becomes a process. So I limit the amount of internships I do just because I know that there's a lot of dedication on my part. But at the same time, what I ask for from the interns is 100% commitment. And we have, when we hold the internships, we put out a casting call, if you will, or a request for interns. And it's always the same thing. Everybody, we've gotten better at the application process over the years, because originally it was just everybody shot me their resumes. And the problem with resumes is this: I guarantee you, if every single one of you guys were to give me a resume right now, I would have no idea who you guys are. I wouldn't know you from you. I wouldn't know if you're better than him or if you're more, talented or you're more passionate. I have no idea who's what, because you guys are all going to do the same thing that I did. You're going to find a really nice cardstock. You can put the really fancy font and something really cool and a little, maybe some stock art, a photo of like a microphone or something. And you're going to try to bedazzle me with, advanced experience in Pro Tools, and then you're going to list like random stuff like Word and Excel. I don't know why people put that on it, but it's on there. And it's like I get all these resumes and they all look the same. I have no idea who's doing what or if I even like you as a person. So what I do is I ask you to submit a 60-second video. It doesn't have to be polished. I don't care if you do it on your iPhone. Just send me 60 seconds, you looking in the camera and you telling me that you want to be here. that you want to be at the Chop Shop. Because I got to see it in your eyes. You either have passion or you don't. You either really, really want to be here or you don't. I don't want people that just kind of want to be here. I want people that are just going to be like, they're going to show up early, they're going to stay late, they're going to put in their time, and they're going to like really, hunger is what I'm after. Somebody that's hungry. And so we did, I can't play videos, but if you guys get a chance, check out the YouTube channel. For the zombie apocalypse, one guy, Skittles, I had already casted the crew for the internship. So I had all the interns I wanted. And at the last minute, literally like the last day of entry, Skittles sent me this video. Skittles, his name is John Rick. When you intern for me, I give you a nickname. And you can't pick your own nickname. I have to give it to you. It's just like a little thing that we do. And so he got to be called Skittles because he's a rap artist. And he's really, really good. And he produces music as well. So we joke that he was like Eminem, but sweeter. So he got the nickname. He got the nickname Skittles. Yeah, he's a softie. But at any rate, so he finds out like the day before the deadline, he finds out about the internship. He's like, oh my gosh, I gotta make a 60-second video. So in 24 hours, this joker writes a rap, puts the music together for the rap, shoots a music video of him rapping it, and then submits it the next day. And I watched the video. I'll try to put it on Facebook later today if you guys can check it out. If you guys want, add me as a friend on Facebook. You guys can check it out, just Ric Viers. But at any rate, so he sends me this video, and it's this rap about how he wants to intern at the Chop Shop. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he comes to the studio, and I open the door, and he goes, hey, how you doing? I said, shh. I said, unless you say something insanely stupid in the next 5 minutes, you've already got the internship. I'm like, you've already showed me in that 60 seconds that you really, really want to be here. But to me, it's like, that's what it takes. Showing me that this is really, really what you want to do. So once we get the interns in, we basically will pick a project that we're going to work on. And then we spend however long, usually 3 to 4 months, just making a sound effects library. And so they get to know everything from, how we go about producing the library, recording techniques with the microphones and picking the right locations, working a prop or object to get the best sound out of it. And then we go through the editing process and then the design process. And what's great is I bring on a video producer as well as one of the interns. When I first got started, there wasn't any opportunity like this. So my goal was have like the world's coolest internship program, right? And it's like when people want to make videos, they want to produce videos and be a director, there's really not an opportunity for you to kind of sink your teeth into a project unless you get hired for it. So for me, the idea was, let's bring on a video producer as an intern and give him full reign of the videos that we produce. So what you guys see in the videos that we put out, the Chop Shop video diaries, he's shooting all of that stuff, or he or she, whoever's doing it. I'm not even there when they do the interviews. They shoot it all themselves. They put it on a timeline. I help obviously with the sound mix toward the end, but they get kind of nuts and bolts, beginning to end, how to produce a video, how to light the shots, and pacing of the edits and all that kind of stuff. So, did I answer your question?
Some of them are pretty funny.
Are they really? Thank you.
Especially the last 2 seasons have been pretty good.
Yeah, seasons, we're getting ready to do season 5, but yeah, season 3 was Zombie Apocalypse, season 4 was Heroes and Villains.
We'll start wrapping it up here, but one thing that's becoming more and more of an issue, Hollywood, a few things are happening. One, films are getting easier to produce because of gear availability. That means budgets are lower. Hollywood's getting more expensive to live in. And there's more people saturating the market. It's harder to get a job. So making it in LA or New York or San Francisco, it's a lot harder than it used to be. You've never worked out of LA. You've worked out of Detroit. Tell me about how technology and what you do lends itself to being able to work remotely. I know a few other guys like Frank Bree lives in Idaho, and he's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So a lot of students want to go to LA, but it's rent is $2,000 a month, and you're interning for peanuts. If you can't afford that or want to avoid that, talk to me a little bit about working remotely, but still having an impact on Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no clear-cut answer in that. I mean, everybody's path is different. Everybody's circumstances and environment that you're in right now is different. So it's just a matter of finding a need and filling the need. The price game doesn't work anymore because everything's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Labor's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So you can't be like the cheapest guy in town and expect to survive. You have to be the best at what you do. You have to be your circle of friends and their circle of friends, and that whole network. Everybody, when they get together at parties, should be talking about, who's the great sound guy is this guy, and they should be talking about you. That means you need to get your name out there. You need to start helping. I tell guys all the time, if you really want to get into film sound, the best thing you can do in your town is start participating in 48-hour film challenges. First off, it'll brush up your skills, because if you can do something that fast, because most 48-hour films, they don't even mess with the sound. Well, we've done 11 or 12, and we've won an award for all of them so far. So far, we've got a perfect track record. But when they bring them in, of course, we're the chop shop, so we'll do like a full Foley session. We'll do voiceover, or not voiceover, but we'll do ADR, and we just, polish it up. But it's great because the interns get to see the entire process of post sound for a film in like 6 hours or 7 hours or however long we have to do it. But it brushes up your skills, obviously. But the second thing is it's a networking thing. You get to meet all of those people, right? And they're going to see how great of a job you did, because hopefully you're going to do an awesome job. And then you go to the screenings. Well, guess what? Not only do you just work with 10 or 15 people, now you're in a building with 20 other, 30 other groups. So now you've just taken that number and times it by 20. You got like 200 or 300 people that you can network with and can have an opportunity to see the work that you've done. And sometimes when we go to do the films, people walk out and oh my gosh, you guys' films sounded amazing, which is so weird because most filmmakers don't refer to the sound of a film because people think film is a visual medium, and it's not. It's sound and picture. And if you can do such a great job to where your stuff sticks out from the other, films that are being shown, just from the simple fact that there was continuity in the sound and it wasn't patchy or it wasn't a very noisy track or hard to hear everything, people will notice that, and it will sound different to everybody else, and you'll get noticed that way. So it's just jump in and do something. Get started, push your way into it, just keep pushing. Frank is a really cool guy. We actually, we worked on some projects. We did some sound ideas stuff. We did stuff on the General and a couple of other libraries. So I recognized his name. I think we met 4 or 5 years ago online, I think. But he does, it's the exact same thing. He just works, out of his town, and he has an impact in Hollywood because they're using his stuff, but he's doing it from the comfort of his own hometown.
And he lives in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Which is great for recording sound.
It takes him like 20 minutes to get to the grocery store.
Yes, yeah.
So, and he has an amazing view from his house now.
I know, he's got that new place. I've seen the pictures.
So, it's increasingly easier to do remote work and have impact on Hollywood from remotely.
It's the interweb.
The interweb. So speaking of the interweb, networking being key, how has Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn played into your personal network, and how friendly do you think it is to people just trying to get in? I mean, you're Ric Viers. I mean,
you're Colin Hart.
Well, now I am. But before, obviously before you were Ric Viers, the Ric Viers.
You act like one day somebody gave me a cape and then I became Ric Viers.
But before you were the Ric Viers and people knew who you were, obviously they didn't have social networking. But if they did, how would you have used it to build your network, and how friendly do you think that is in the sound and film world?
Social media is a really good thing. First off, the LinkedIn, I have no idea how that's supposed to work. I get so many people invite me to be their friend or however that they have, I don't know, invitation or whatever. I always just say yes, just to be polite, but I don't ever really use it.
It's not really a big thing in our industry.
I don't get how it works, but then again, I still have a MySpace page.
That's a thing?
Just kidding. No, but and Facebook, and now the rumor is Facebook's going away, so now I'm looking for the next thing to jump into. But Facebook is, well, first off, regardless of, I answer every email that people send me. I don't care who it is. To me, it's like if I'm going to write books, then I owe it to the reader to be able to answer questions. So my whole thing with Facebook is I just want place where people can reach out, ask me questions, or do whatever. But for you guys that are starting, here's the thing with Facebook, okay? So Facebook shows you everything. And when people want to intern, one of the things I say is add me as a friend on Facebook. And then as soon as they add me, I turn around, I look at their Facebook page because I want to see what they're really like. Because it's like when you sit down for the interview, you're always like, you're putting on your best foot, your best foot forward, and you're all nice and polite. And I have no idea what your personality really is. A couple of pictures on Facebook will tell me everything I need to know. And another thing is when you intern for me, when you come to interviews, you're not allowed to wear a tie. And I've had a couple of people, they show up and they wear the tie, and I make them take the tie off at the door. I'm like, no. Because nobody gets to dress better than me in my studio, right? Not going to happen. But so know this, if you've got a Facebook page and you're reaching out to an employer or to a potential client or somebody, filmmaker or whatever, what are they going to see on your Facebook page? You got to think about that as you're posting pictures of like this keg stand you did last weekend or whatever else that you're onto. If you want to have that kind of a life and that kind of a world and share it with people, get an alias. Spell your name differently or do whatever, share it with your friends, put all the crazy stuff there. But if you're looking to really advance yourself in your career, you got to have a professional presence on Facebook. Because if we go there and you look like a party monkey and you don't look like you're paying attention or you're constantly griping about clients, dude, director, blah, 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 and so I'm not even going to da-da-da-da-da, and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. You get in all that kind of rants, and believe it or not, a lot of people do that. They get on and they rant about everything. It's like, dude, I don't want to work with that guy. That guy's going to say mean things about me, or whatever. So think about that when you're posting, when you're tweeting as well. Everything is copyrighted. Watermarking gets into an issue when it comes to digital downloads, and so we've had some distributors that have specifically requested that we don't watermark stuff, but it really just comes down to, it's a licensing thing. If you've used the sound in a production, so I got a couple. Oh, there's two of you guys. All right, you guys, we'll battle it out. You guys see me afterwards and we'll get it. So the thing is this, you can access the sounds, but if you put a sound effect that you don't have the right to use in a project that you're making for a film or whatever, and we find that out, now that film is in jeopardy, and there are legal actions that can go against that. And most guys that are, people in this industry know you can't use unlicensed sound in a project because then that puts that project in jeopardy. And so not only will the project have legal action against them, but then everybody's going to find out that such and such a sound designer is using stuff that he shouldn't be using, and then that could damage your career as well. And the industry is a very small industry, and bad news travels really, really fast. So you don't want to be the guy that's known for pirating sounds. That said, 3 months after the internship, Skittles ended up becoming a really good friend, so now we hang out all the time. But Skittles, the guy who did the video, the rap video, we were in the studio last year, and he's like, we were listening to his song for something, and he's like, do you recognize that sound at the beginning? I'm like, no, what is it? He's like, dude, that's the sound that you made. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize it. He goes, just so you know, he goes, I feel bad, and I didn't want to tell you during the internship, but I pirated that sound. Like, oh, so I made him buy me a coffee. But that's the thing is that you can get away with it. Can you use sounds illegally? Oh yeah, every day, yeah, as much as you want, I guess. But if it gets discovered, then you're in a whole big world of problems you don't want to be in. So, does that help? Yeah.
Hello. My name is Kenny Concepcion. I'm in the Recording Arts Bachelor's Degree program. No, it's working. Yeah. My question to you is actually kind of following her question. For copyright, when you first started off, you mentioned a company in Canada. Mm-hmm. And my question to you is, when you first started out, did you have your sounds copyrighted? Like, were you worried about anybody taking in? Actually,
when I wasn't publishing, I was producing for companies. So I would produce them, and it was a work for hire. So in some cases there were royalties, but they would take the sounds and then copyright them in their library. And so they would handle the copyright. And then once, obviously, I started self-publishing, then it became then I had to copyright it, or we had to copyright it, on behalf of Blastwave FX, yeah.
Would you recommend building a sound design, like special effects library more than actual just a regular door shutting library? Which one would you recommend more, for a start?
Well, I mean, if you're talking as a sound designer or a sound editor, a lot of times, you're going to rely on sound libraries and stock sounds. A lot of guys, especially in Hollywood, they'll have their own collection of sounds, and that's their sounds. It's not a commercial library, and they don't sell it commercially. It's their bank of sounds. And so whenever a studio hires them, they know that they're not only going to get this guy's talent, but they're also going to get this guy's bank of sounds that he has. And so you want to, anything and everything that you're going to need. I mean, there's obviously staples that you're going to need. You're going to need, I don't know, car horns and doors closing and footsteps and all kinds of things like that. But as you go along, you'll get a project and all of a sudden you have a need to go out and record race cars. Now you go out and record race cars, you throw them in your pile, and then you've got something that nobody else has, in case you ever do anything else with race cars. So, coming from your angle of you want to be a sound editor and you want to have sounds that you can use in your projects, go for the staples. Go for the stuff that the meat and potatoes, the stuff that's always going to get used. Going out and recording some kind of rare African beetle mating is not going to really be useful if you're constantly working on dramas or things like that. So you want to kind of think along those lines. What kind of films are you going to end up working on, or projects or video games or whatever?
My name's Jesus Rodriguez. And I'm in the recording bachelor's degree. And I'm interested in post-production, more or less the sound design aspect of it. When I record for the films that I work on, sometimes I just rip stuff off of YouTube and just cut out the audio and try to recreate everything. When you do sound design, do you rely more on synthetic creation, or do you record more for like sci-fi elements?
I'm a big fan of organic sounds, and again, Ben Burt was kind of like the king of that, because up until Star Wars, all of the sci-fi stuff was all synthesized. It was all synthesizers, and the Star Trek and all that stuff. And he kind of said, let's take a real world approach, and used organic sounds to create the sound effects that became so iconic. So I'm a big fan of doing that as well. So I would say of all my sci-fi stuff, there might be less than 5% that I actually grabbed from a synthesizer. And even then, it's just because I wanted something, unique. But you can make just about, anything you can think of using organic sounds. If you really know how to blend and twist. I think we got for zombies, I think I showed this last year, we have fluorescent lights flickering, all that kind of stuff. And then I think if I remember right, I offered a $100 bill to anybody that could get it, and nobody could guess what I used. And it was like literally a millisecond of a piece of fruit falling on the ground. And I took that and I looped it and I layered it and started adding pitches and some other kind of weird effects to it. And I made this really realistic, believable fluorescent light. So that's just kind of like one of those things where it's like once you practice enough, experiment enough, and play enough, you can, the world's your oyster. You can take any group of sounds and put them together and make something completely unique. So, and when all else fails, try vocalizing it. Grab a microphone and get the meat of what you're looking for. Try to process that. If not, go around looking for stuff that will emulate or sound like that. Just like with the cupboard door and opening, and it sounded like Chewbacca. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you around.